Hello everyone, my name is Michael Schofield. Today has been, and yesterday have been awful days again for the Western world. Not just for the UK or Manchester, but once again we've had another mass suicide bombing atrocity. How do we react to that? Many ways to react. Although it seems to be there are two chief ways that we react to that. Either big outrage, sending prayers, love, hashtags, changing your profile picture, Twitter and Facebook, social media, all gather round to be united. And then the other side is hate them all, deport them all Muslims are bad, we should have no immigrants, we should just completely reject any form of multiculturalism. Is either side right? Are both sides right? Are both sides sort of wrong? In my opinion, both sides are wrong. And it's no surprise, because when a big atrocity like this happens, we look for both extremes. Either everybody's amazing, everybody's evil. It's completely understandable. I do it. We all do it. We all shout at the TV. We all tweet angrily. It happens. Completely natural. But then when we get down to policies and what we should actually do, I'm of course referring to the Ariana Grande attack in May 2017, with, as of speaking, 22 killed and many more injured. And horrific, looks like by the sound of it, maybe a nail bomb attack, which we have not seen before, as far as I'm aware, with all these terror attacks. So some new threats are emerging as well. It seems to be at concerts, and I wouldn't be surprised if we see some sporting stadiums as well as targets. I'll get into why they're some chief targets for terrorists. So, if both sides are wrong, in my opinion, what should we do? How can we improve things? Well, I think you take a bit of from both sides. As within politics, as within anything, you need to look at the merits of both sides. Of course, we have to understand the majority of Muslims are not looking to kill anyone. Majority of people are fine, decent, well-intentioned people. Even though, in my opinion, that isn't good enough. That's good enough if you're a child, but an adult needs to have more than just good intentions. We need more than that. And I think if we stop dumbing ourselves down to thinking that that's good enough, we will be at such a higher level, such a greater vantage point to improving everything, absolutely every issue possible. We need to just push away from just being nice or going with what intuitively seems nice. And sometimes we need to be counterintuitive in the way that we actually solve problems. And that means some uncomfortable truths. Whilst I said most Muslims are not to blame, there is a percentage, as there was always a percentage of the Catholic Church, quite a large percentage, probably a greater percentage, who were against gay people and were anti-women and anti-people of no faith, heretics, anybody who was even of the faith but would challenge a particular orthodox version of that faith. Most people accept Christianity was a part of that. Opinions are divided when it comes to Islam and Islamists and Muslims, and which parts are accepted. But from what we've seen, there seems to be a significant proportion who are against gay people, who have certain attitudes towards the way women should be. Full-length veils, I think, is a pretty indicative of a lot of people's attitudes towards women, and quite frankly, they also reflect the attitudes towards men. If they see a woman, they have to molest her or rape her. So it's actually against both. But neither side should be hated. I'm going back and forth here because it's important. We can just lay out one side or the other. I think it's important to go back and forth with these certain issues. It's almost like it's a legal talk, in that you look at the particular bits of the information, you pick out certain parts that make sense here, makes sense there. It's not like an essay which is just one structure. This is good, this is bad. Each aspect of all of these issues, there are bits of good on this side, or bits of part that are credible on this part, and then there are parts on another side that aren't credible, or that are credible, make sense on the other side of the argument. That's why, generally, the way I speak, I'm going back and forth on these issues. Most Muslims don't mean harm. Most people, I would argue everybody, is a product of how they were brought up. If you're brought up in a certain way, you are going to be that certain way. That doesn't mean you've been born with a psychopathic brain, with certain genes missing, or that you're going to be automatically evil. Of course, no evidence in the races or nationalities that people are automatically evil. But the other side, again, because you are what you're made to be, there are different scales of being good or bad. It's not that we're all made perfectly, or we're all made equally in the sense of, as I said, we are brought up differently, and so some of those different cultures will not be as good as some of the other cultures. So it's not about hating. A child's brought up in a certain environment, say. You can't blame the child for the way he's going to turn out. She's going to turn out for the most part, with the early years forming us so much more than we even seem to understand. But that's not to say that that person then is great. They're unlucky. They're very unfortunate in the way that they've been brought up. If they're brought up into a society that says we should have full-length veils, because that obviously, no matter which fringes, which elements of feminism try to claim it's a feminist statement, it clearly isn't. That isn't even up for debate. It's not a feminist statement to cover your face. Does that even need to be explained? The people and the women who think it is, who do put themselves in that veil, they of course have been brainwashed. It's the most obvious example of brainwashing we've ever known. We don't, when someone has Stockholm syndrome, we don't say, well, they're okay, really, that was their choice. No, we know it's a syndrome. We know that they've been brainwashed that way. To want to cover your face and your body and cover your whole identity is an obvious example of brainwashing and where that culture has gone wrong. An example that culture is not good in certain aspects, that we shouldn't be promoting that around the world. This idea of freedom is not 100%. There is no 100% freedom. There's no complete freedom for anything. There's no complete Western way of life, Eastern way of life, religion, free speech. And yet free speech should be protected as much as we can do, free expression, which includes making cartoons of certain religions, because why the hell shouldn't you? Everything should be parodied, everything should be criticised. It's how we advance, it's how we improve, it's how we innovate. But when you have certain people saying, no, you should know, it wasn't the cartoonists who were, no, it was the cartoonists who were at fault for making a representation of Allah or Muhammad, not the people who went and machine gunned them down. You see, that's ridiculous. It's not free, is it? How is that free? You are saying you cartoonists are not free to make this. So the people who say they're for the freedom of different cultures, what about the culture of the parody people? The cartoonists? Where's their freedom? The point is, if you're going to be saying there are freedoms just for these people, you're going to be taking freedoms away from other people. Or if you have the idea that there's freedom for everyone, murderers, rapists, women, the right to walk around showing their face, these are not cultures that are enriching in any way. This is not helpful. Which again is not to say that Eastern cultures aren't enriching in many ways, with food and colour and vibrancy and different attitudes towards stripping ourselves away from just being materialistic entities. Excellent. We are adding in those senses, but we have to stop thinking that everything Eastern is superior to the West. There's an attitude now in so many self-hating Western people that we need to ultimately change in the West. We gradually evolve, and the Western world, greater than any other civilization, any other part of the world ever, has gradually evolved to the state that we're in now. Every few years in my lifetime, and I'm a pretty young person, some good, some bad, but the fluid, open nature of the Western world means we do change. And that is an amazing strength. Changing so much and being influential so much that we're actually influencing the East to change. And bit by bit, as I think we will see with the eventually, when, no one knows, but I think we'll see eventually the influence on North Korea will prove to be very good for North Korea, China, the whole region. The fact that we have got involved in North Korea, if we don't get obliterated in the meantime, which I don't think we will, if the North Koreans did actually try to attack America, they would be shut down. But that's another video. But again, we can learn certain things from the Eastern world, but I think enough evidence there is now, enough evidence is there that the Western world influences things more, generally better. In some ways, really not. Really not. And there has to be that humility, understand that I'm a Westerner, so I would say it from that perspective. But when you really add up the pros and cons for both, is there any contest there really? So we have some more confidence in the Western world, secularism, because with religion, you automatically, as well as getting good things, you produce all kinds of good things. Sports stars point to the sky, people have their crosses and they do good works and charity works. But as the late great Christopher Hitchens said, name a moral deed that a religious person does that an atheist cannot do. There isn't one. If an atheist can do something that a religious person can do, why exactly do we need religion anymore? We did before science. You could say because we had so much anarchy, we had to have some sort of structure to hold us, to bind us, to form societies and civilizations. Now we don't need that. We need true secularism, true belief in science, true promotion of science, which doesn't have the outcomes, the side effects that you get with every other belief system that we've ever known. It's not helpful. Some of the alt-right people now move back to Christianity or whatever. No, it's regressive. Let's move forward to a scientific new beginning. True belief in it, which again is not to say that everybody should have the same politics. Too many scientists, the other side of it, too many scientists just all want us to be this form of progressivism, without understanding that there are certain aspects of religions, the promotion of morality, that makes sense. The promotion of the Western world makes sense. You won't get too many of these progressives, liberal scientists saying things from those perspectives. Are so politically motivated that there is only one way forward. That in itself is not particularly analytical and intelligent. To get morality, we do need to base it in science, not in politics, not in pitting people against one or the other. The irony of the progressives is that they are alienating half the people. How is that making any sense? That's not going to help. That's just going to increase divisions. For the many and not just a few, for roughly half scientists, whereas true science is actually independent of politics. It is. You might dislike certain people on the other side of politics, but it doesn't really matter. On both sides, you will have scientists. You will have people who believe in science and truth. It's ultimately about truth-seeking. We need an Einsteinian way of truth-seeking. Absolutely every aspect of ourselves is about looking for the truth. So all of this back around again. Secular society, no bad side effects that we get from religions. For all the good that's done, we get too much that's bad. No politicization of science. It's not needed. It's divisive. It doesn't actually help. Speak of science. Speak of intelligence, comedy, everything that the Western world has been good about for, and promote all of those things. Promote it from a scientific perspective. Don't dumb it down, basically. Every time we look to dumb the arguments down, we don't need to dumb the arguments down. The arguments of truth will come through. We put them into education, into schools. If we're strong enough to actually put them into every school, science, truth, evolution, everything that we find scientifically, put them into schools, get lovely, open-minded little individuals in a secular society. No politics involved, other than you're going against religions, which will have certain consequences for certain people, but quite frankly, you have to push past certain people. Not half the population, but certain people will always be pushed past, as we're talking about again with freedoms. But anyway, to come back around to this particular issue, awful issue, don't just passionately react one way or another, other than shouting at TV. Completely natural. If you want to cry, you cry. If you shout, you shout. It's completely natural. We are animals at the end of the day, and we all have our own ideas as to the way these issues should be solved. But I will say, from my own perspective on this sort of issue, is that we do need to do more. And the theme of what I've been saying is to not apologise for the Western world's way of life and secularism. We need to promote it more, if anything. Then it can spread around the world. We don't have to have terror attacks. We shouldn't be blaming immigrants. But at the same time, we shouldn't be deifying them. We shouldn't be deifying the Eastern world. We should have confidence again in secularism, confidence in science, not what it became with communism, which was the most religious entities we've ever formed. Anything where you deify somebody, the dictators of communism were the gods. We need science, truth-seeking, something that we all actually want. Every religious person wants the truth. They've just come to their own flawed conclusions. But we all want the truth. And we need to properly push, unapologetically, for the truth. Not against people, not against conservatives, not against liberals, but just tunnel vision towards truth and push forward with that truth as we go. We don't need to apologise for any religions that in the meantime may become so unfashionable that eventually they disappear. That if I may be so bold, would say that will actually improve the world if we don't have religions in the year 2017 going forward. For all the good that's done, too much bad can come from belief systems that are not rooted in truth. When we are being unnatural, we will get unnatural outcomes. When we are believing in something that it is obviously not correct, such as religions, obviously not correct, we move away from science, from nature, from things that actually make us happy in the long term, sustainably happy. Unapologetically move back to science and the implications that come from there, not demonizing anybody, not for anyone, not against anyone, but passionately in the pursuit of truth again is where we need to be. And eventually, by having that truth-seeking in schools, these attacks should be stopped. But they can and only will be stopped if there is that concerted effort, that strong belief in the Western world and in secularism, to imagine that one day we will be in a world without religion and without terror attacks.